Evening, guys. Tonight I'm starting to work on the tunnel on the back corner of the layout. And the first thing I'm working on here is a couple of tunnel liners, because obviously I don't want the train to derail in the tunnel. Those styrofoam blocks you see back there are just kind of for height purposes right now. But anyway, what I'm doing, I've got this really thin packing material. I don't know, that's probably 3/16 of an inch thick, I would say. It's real thin styrofoam. And I was just going to spray paint it gray, but as you see, the spray paint attacks the foam. So what I've come up with is covering a strip of that material with painter's tape wrapped around the ends. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray the painter's tape gray. And that'll not only will it not attack the foam that way, but the nice thing about it is it adds quite a bit of stiffness, as you can see, compared to just the foam itself. And then I'm going to tack it on the back side here inside the tunnel, and just seeing where that sits, it comes around right to where I've got the the end of the landscaping right now. I may move it up a little bit in there just to see where the tunnel portal looks the best, and then obviously I don't want to get too far away from the tunnel portal on this end. So I've got one down in the garage that I've actually just painted. So I'm going to take this one down now, and I'll glue these to the outside of the riser here, just with Elmer's glue, and then I'll pin them with some of these push pins too, which I'll just leave in there. They'll be hidden. So that's, I guess, I'm not sure how far I'm going to get on this tonight. If I get very far, I'll definitely record it. Back here on the other side of the layout, I've done quite a bit. You can see I've got some rocks in there, and those are rocks from the neighborhood. So I've got a few pieces down here on the front, just some other chunks of rock. What I did is I took, I think in the other video you saw where I had some areas spray painted gray where I thought rocks would look good, and I just took my drywall knife and I cut out an area big enough for the rocks to slide in, and once I got them adjusted, I blended them with the existing landscape just by using plaster cloth around the edges of the rock, and then just finished painting that brown. So I've got a few in here and there. When I started putting these in here, I had so many gray spots on there, it was just going to look really kind of wacky with all those rocks in there. So I just put, I don't know, maybe there's 7 or 8 in there. And then back here on the corner where the church is going to go, I decided to put a rock, kind of a rock wall in there. You can see it's painted brown. I added another level of foam in the back. I raised it up another inch. By the time I got the rocks in there, the corner piece was down, behind the rocks, and I didn't want that. So I raised it up an inch or so. And you can see there are some fairly big gaps in between them, which I'll fill in with some sand that I have, and kind of color that. Over here, I use some smaller pieces, and obviously I'll be putting dirt and ground foam and so forth in there. One thing I will do later tonight, this is still wet back here in the corner, but I'm going to paint the backdrop from where you see it here, where it ends, on around the corner here, and I'm going to get the tripod out and put the camera on there, and you can see that painting technique that I used. If you don't want to watch me dabbing paint on the wall, obviously you can stop and not watch that segment. But so that's my plan. I'm going to work on this the other tunnel portal over here. for a few minutes, and then I'm going to jump in. You know, it may be a while, so before this dries, I don't want to get back in there and drag my sleeve through brown paint. So I may work on the tunnel a little bit more. Regardless of what I do, I'll go ahead and record it. Subscribers, John Prescott. If you haven't seen his layout, you need to jump over there and take a look at his. He's in the very early stages of construction. He at least has track down and trains running and buildings, but one of his suggestions was on these wood chip hoppers that I should put a very light brown wash on these wood chips, sawdust, to kind of take the brightness off. So I'm going to do that live and on camera here. So what I've got is some of this brown paint that I've used on the background, and I've got just a few drops of it in some water here. So I'm going to drop this wash onto the wood chips and let's see what it looks like. It is taking it down a little bit, not quite so bright. I don't want to put too much on here because it'll loosen up the glue, but I think that looks pretty good. Thanks, John. Appreciate that tip. We'll just go ahead and let this dry, and if it turns out well, we'll do the other three. So just very light brown. Alright, so let me grab one of the others here. And I'm just going to tip this up a little bit. So you can tell that there is a difference. I think the darker chips look a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of my cars, and then we'll see things I've been working on tonight. I'm working on my third bridge, which is going to look a little different. I thought it might look interesting. I've got a couple of plate girder bridges on the end here, and I've built a little trestle bridge in the center, and that's going to go right over here on this inside track from that point to this point. So just wanted to do something a little bit different. I'm going to have to put something that looks like cement piers under there at some point. But anyway, so that's the bridge. And then back over here in the back corner, I have my country road in. There's paving tape in there, and I'm using drywall mud to make that road. Just had a piece of scrap styrene here left over, and I've used that as a screed to go ahead and level that out. So, you know, country road, it doesn't have to be perfect. Obviously, once it's dry, I'll paint it, you know, sort of a grayish color. You know, try and put some cracks in it, and then on the back side there, you know, have the church and maybe the house, and then maybe belong right here in the back corner, have a small cemetery. I don't know if I'll use all of the tombstones I have. You know, it's just a little scene, nothing fancy. But anyway, so that's what I've been working on tonight, and I will continue to make these short updates and string them all together. So it seems to be easier that way. Alright, so I'm going to try and video this. I have my cell phone sitting up on top of a little paint can here, but I wanted to show you the painting technique back here in the corner that I used. So what I'm going to do is I've got some black and yellow paint, and I'm using the top of the foam here kind of as my palette. This is all going to be covered eventually with cork, you know, as part of my yard. So just take a blob of black paint and let me make sure this is shaken out, and a blob of yellow paint, kind of separate it out there, And let me move some of this stuff out of the way. And what I do is just take my brush and a little bit of yellow, a little bit of black, kind of dab it around there, and just start, hitting it on the backdrop. So that's got a little bit too much black in, so I'm going to take some more yellow. And mix it in there. And so what I'll do after I get the black and yellow on here is I will take that lighter green and go over the top of this base with that lighter green. So hopefully this isn't going to be too boring here, but just want to kind of show you how easy this is to do. And you don't want to try for consistent color. You want to have mixtures of colors in there. Obviously you want to try and get the majority of the blue covered. And I may actually have a little bit too much black here, so I'm going to go ahead and put some more yellow down. It's more black than it is green right now, so I'm going to take some yellow and kind of go right over the top of that just to lighten it up a little bit. So I've got quite a bit of black here, so I'm going to go over that with some yellow. I'm actually going to try and mix some of this together here a little bit. See how that does. Okay, that may be a little bit better. A little bit more yellow. That's got a pretty good color right there. I don't know if that color is going to show up too well on the video, but after I get done, I'll go ahead and do a close-up here. And I'm going to stay kind of away from my road here, so eventually I can, paint the road onto the backdrop as if it's going into the trees. So I'm going to come right over here and blend into this section that I've already done. And you can see that there's really not any skill involved at all in doing this. Put a little bit more yellow in here. The one thing you don't want to do is get it too dark. And of course, you can just come right over the top with the yellow and it'll mix, blend in. I've got it a little bit too heavy there. Alright, now the one thing I just realized is that my camera is sitting on the paint can that I need to open, which has that lighter green in it. And I just put a big dent in my road. So before that's got a pretty nice green to it now over here. One thing you have to be careful of when you're doing this is you don't get your brush too wet, because the bristles tend to stick together. And once they do that, the trees don't show much definition. Here I sound like Bob Ross, like I'm an expert, but anyway, I may be out of the view here. If I am, I apologize. But all right, so the next thing I'm going to do is get some of that lighter green and go over the top of this to lighten it up just a bit. Don't want to have any big blobs of any one color here. That back in the corner is looking fairly dark, so let me just put a little bit more yellow on there. You know, obviously you want to don't want everything the same height, so it looks like you've got different levels of the trees. And what you can do kind of along the edge, and I don't know if this is in the view or not, is you can just kind of smooth this out here and get kind of a field effect sitting in there. It kind of puts the other trees into the background. So that's not too good over there. All right, so I'm going to stop here for just a second, and I'm going to get some more paint going. Let me just do a little bit more here. Kind of bring this in. Kind of blend this into my existing paint over here. All right, maybe a couple more dabs here and there. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, so I'm going to get a couple of some other paint here and go ahead and do that. So I shall be right back. All right, so I've got my other my other can of paint here. I've rinsed my brush out, same brush. It's still wet, and I'm just going to dab it into this paint and start to cover over the top of this darker background. You know, I don't want to go everywhere. I just want to lighten it up a little bit. A little bit too much paint there in the corner, but just kind of lighten it up and give it a little bit more depth. And obviously this paint that I'm putting up is going to mix with the darker layers underneath. So I don't want to go too heavy. I just want to kind of blend it. I think you know, you've probably heard this referred to as leopard spotting. I guess it's kind of the same idea, but you know, just kind of blobbing it over there. And if you've watched any of that that CNLVN channel that I told you about. The fellow that's doing the painting there makes a pretty good statement. He says that you don't really expect this to look like trees, but what you want is for your mind to fill in the detail. You know, from a distance it looks like trees, but you just want to make it look realistic enough so that so that your mind will fill in the detail here. All right. So this is maybe a little spotty, so I'm going to take a little bit more black and yellow, and that's too much black. Let me get a little bit more yellow here, and just kind of hit this as well, here and there. This green paint in the can has a touch of blue in it. So I don't want, I definitely don't want it to end up looking blue. All right, I'm going to grab a little bit more yellow. hit some of this in the background here. Just hit some of this lighter green paint with a little bit of yellow. So, you can see there is no skill whatsoever involved in this. I'm just taking the brush and smacking it into the wall here, and just letting the result come as it will. I've got a little bit of a problem over here where I've stopped my other hill in that it's a little bit too much contrast here, so I'm going to try and blend that in a little bit. Hopefully this is in the shot. So, and I don't want to go on too long with this. So I think that's looking pretty good. And another thing is knowing when to stop, because you can talk yourself into continuing all night here and making it look a little bit worse than maybe what it ought to. All right. Let's leave well enough alone, and I'm going to go ahead and wash my brush out here, and we'll come back in a few minutes after this has had a chance to dry, and we'll take a look. Here's a shot from a little bit further back, and I guess one of the things you got to do is kind of step back from your work and take a look at it. It looks better from further away. So it's fairly dry now, and I've just peeled, talking about the road now, I've just peeled the edges, the paving tape off the edge of the road. So it's got a few spots of paint in here, but that won't matter. Once I get the road painted, that'll never show. I kind of like that drywall compound a little bit better than the Smooth It stuff. I could never seem to get the Smooth It mixed correctly. It was either too thick or too thin, or just ended up being a mess. But the drywall compound is neat. Obviously it's thicker, it spreads really well, and obviously you've got more time to work with it, and it's if you get it outside the paving tape, you can just kind of scoop it up off your surface there. So anyway, that's all for tonight. I think the battery's getting a little bit low here, but I'll continue to provide updates, and thanks for watching.